Welcome to BizTalk. My name is Wally Rada. I'm your host today. Thank you for joining me. Hello. Well, everybody, welcome to BizTalk. Today, we're looking at a very interesting subject, inflation. Inflation. And another element that affects inflation. Does anybody here know what inflation means? Who can tell me, what does inflation mean? Does anyone know? Does anybody here know what inflation means? Put your hand up if you know what inflation means. Come on, show me how good you are. Most of you are studying with us, and some of you have already covered the word inflation in your material. Hi, Amy. How are you today? Unmute your microphone for me, Amy. What does inflation mean?
Um, Hi, sir. Can you hear me?
Hi, of course I can. Go ahead. What does inflation mean?
It means it's for getting high all the prices of the goods.
Can you give me an example of something you used to do 1
Um,
year ago, a goods or a service, and the price has gone up? Give me an example.
um, the first thing is the food. That's for necessary. Our things that we always use. It's getting
Yep.
high and high. It's
Right.
like
Okay. What? Like, give me an example. Like what?
a passenger fee,
Yeah.
petrol,
Yeah.
and
Okay.
foods
All right.
and clothes
Okay.
and
Very good. Very good. Let me ask you a question. Passenger fees or passenger fares are a result of the increased price of fuel. So could you tell me what's happened in the world in the last 2 years that you think has caused a rise in the price of fuel? What do you think has happened in the last 2 years?
the first thing is the pandemic. The
Right.
first reason is the pandemic.
And the more important one recently, what is that?
Sorry?
There's a more important one that's affected the price of fuel. What is that?
It's the pandemic.
No, the pandemic is not so big on fuel. There's something else that affected the fuel. That's the war. The war
the
where?
sorry, the war between Ukraine
And
and then
Russia.
it's affect a lot because why? Russia is putting they're the one who what's it called? They're the one who deliver the fuel to everyone.
They deliver
So
fuel to most parts of the world, yes, and they have ruined the world, absolutely. So now the world has to rely on other fuel supplies and pay more for fuel. Do you understand that?
yes, sir.
Good on you, Amy. Good, very good example. Very good start, young lady. I'm proud of you. You're learning. You're going to become a teacher one day. Good on you. All right, guys, let's go on today and talk about our real lesson. To those of you who are not here yet and are late, it's really important that when I call a lecture, you are on time, because if you're not, you don't understand the full validity of what I have to say. If you're late, you need to actually organize your time and be here on time. We should have 198 attendees at 5 o'clock. I now have 102. Last week I had 105. When I finished at 7 o'clock, I had 198. Please, guys, tell your friends to be on time. Please do me a favor. All right. Even Amal is on time today. Nice to see you, Amal. Okay, let's talk about inflation. Mr. Amal is on time every week, and he makes sure I'm on time too. Hi, Amala. Okay, all right. Let's go on and talk about inflation, and let's relate inflation to how and why it happens and what inflation does to businesses and corporations around the world. Do you think that companies want inflation? No. Do you think that people enjoy inflation? No. Do you think that the average consumer, including you, know what inflation means? No. For you, all it means is the cost of goods and services go up, right? But inflation is a lot more complex than that. Let us talk about inflation. Okay, we're talking about inflation and we're talking about supply management and what inflation has to do with supply chain management. As you know, all goods and services require raw material or some sort of material that the service provider buys from someone else. And unfortunately, inflation is like COVID-19 disease, because once inflation touches, it affects one of the most important chains that we as consumers rely on in order for us to be able to get the goods and services we need. Let's go on. What do we mean by inflation? Well, the first thing you need to remember is inflation is a disease. And it's one small step for man to understand inflation, but it's one great leap for mankind the day that somebody figures out how to eliminate inflation. Does everybody understand that? So any of you geniuses here, Amy, Annie, Gladys, Edward, Maria, Amal, if you really want to prove yourselves and show me how good you are, try to find a solution to eliminate inflation in the world. Do you understand that? Because no one has been able to solve that to today. It is one of the greatest leaps that mankind can take if we can eliminate inflation completely. Inflation, ladies and gentlemen, is when prices increase, okay, the level of goods and services in an economy. So due to the increase in the general price, the level of goods and services in the economy becomes scarce. Why? Because as a result of people paying higher prices, customers walk away. They won't buy it. So therefore, the people that you buy from stop bringing stock in because no one's buying it. And therefore, whatever's available on the market, the shortage causes inflation. When the general price level rises, each unit of currency buys fewer goods and services. Consequently, inflation corresponds to a reduction in the purchasing power of money. So that means Amal used to go and buy a t-shirt for $5 US. Suddenly, the t-shirt manufacturer had an increase in the cost of cotton or in the cost of synthetic fabric. Therefore, the next time the supplier in Turkey goes to buy t-shirts, the manufacturer in China is going to say, sorry, my cost price is no longer $2. It's now $4. So when Amal goes to buy the same t-shirt again, the price has now gone from $5 to $10. There's two things that can happen. Amal will buy it or Amal won't buy it. Do we all understand that? Yes or no? The majority of consumers will not buy it. They'll walk away. Why? Because for the money that Amal earns, her buying power would be much more restricted or controlled if she has to pay double for a t-shirt. Does she really need the t-shirt? No, she needs food. She needs pay education fees. She needs to pay for basic medical fees. Can she really afford to spend $10? That's double what she used to spend before. Do you all understand that? Yes or no? Okay, good. Inflation is the gradual loss of purchasing power reflected in a broad rise of prices for goods and services. Okay? Do you all understand that? Okay, let me give you an example. Korean hair salons are very fashionable all over the world. By 2015, 2016, there was Korean hair salons in every part of the world because young, good-looking Korean guys, young, good-looking Korean girls attract customers to their salons. But during COVID-19, the ability of Korean stylists to work in other countries was restricted because most of them left those countries to go back to Korea because of COVID-19. So therefore, the Korean salons that still employed Korean stylists put up their prices. But were they able to retain as many customers? No, because the cost of their services doubled. And therefore, the customers' buying power was restricted and they had less customers. Were they making more money? In reality, no, because when they lost customers, the increase in price only covered for the customers they lost, but they didn't gain any new customers. Does everybody understand that example, Amal? Edward? Thank you. All right. Inflation affects customers, consumers, buyers most directly. Businesses can also feel the impact. People like Amy, people like Edward, people like Amala when he goes out to buy food, or Amala goes out to buy milk powder for his baby, when he has a baby in the future, and hopefully it's going to be really soon because he's already been married 6 months or more. Okay. So, and I'm sure his mother's pushing him for a grandchild. I'm sure, right, Amala? Everybody give Amala a big hand. Encourage him to have a kid. Come on, everyone. Give Amala a big hand. Everybody clap. Good. Excellent. Amal, clap for Amala, please. You see him every week. Clap for him. Good girl. All right. Thank you. That's enough fun. Now let's move on. So Amala, when he goes out to buy baby milk, he still needs to buy milk powder for his daughter, even if the cost of the milk powder has increased by 50%. But what will that do to his buying power? It means in order for him and his wife to give the baby milk powder, they will spend less on other items they would usually buy. So his buying power is restricted. Does it mean that the milk powder company makes more profit? No, because for some people, they can't afford to buy it anymore. And the increase in price will only cover or sustain the ones that walk away. Okay, so inflation doesn't mean that the business is going to make more money, because the business has to suffer the consequences of consumers that no longer have the right buying power. Do you all understand that? Yes or no? All right. So purchasing power is the ability to buy something, having enough money to buy something. Does everybody understand that? Yes or no? So if I asked Amy today, Amy, can you afford to go out and buy a Louis Vuitton handbag for 20,000 US dollars? Amy does not have the buying power. So even if Louis Vuitton increased the price, they are not going to get any new customers. All they're going to do is maybe retain the customers they already have, or cover their loss for the customers that run away. Does everybody understand that? Okay, good. All right. Companies lose purchasing power and risk seeing their margins decline, because if they can't buy at lower prices and they have to pay more for their goods, they have to sell at higher prices. When they sell at higher prices, their profit margin might be lower, because if they increase the price double, they will lose more customers. So if the cost of the product has increased by 10%, then usually they would only increase their selling price by 10%. They cannot double their selling price, because it's highly likely then they'll have no customers left for their product. Okay, so the margin is basically a risk for the business. All right, let me ask anyone here, if you go to buy a product, for example, a watch, okay, and last year you bought that watch for $1,000, but your watch has broken down. Your mobile phone has broken down. You really need a mobile phone, but you love Samsung. Now, Samsung have increased their prices from $1,000 to $1,100, 10% increase. That may still be affordable. But if Samsung turned around and said, we are doubling the price to $2,000, what are the repercussions for Samsung? They are likely to lose a big market of their customers. Do you understand what I'm saying? Yes or no? The majority of consumers have what's called a comfort zone when it comes to price. Remember, we spoke about customer centricity, understanding your customer. Each customer has what's called a break zone or break point. It's the point at which they no longer buy the product due to price. As a result, companies typically raise the prices of their products or services to offset inflation. And what that means is, if they've suffered a 10% increase from the supplier, they will pass that on to their consumer. For many companies, the trick is to strike a balance between raising the price to make up for input cost increases, while simultaneously ensuring they don't rise so much that it suppresses demand, which is touched on later when I go through this lesson. All right. So just think of it this way. Think of it this way. Amala runs a restaurant in India. It's a Michelin star restaurant. It makes the finest Indian food in the world. And every week I go there to eat his chicken curry because it's the best in the world. He always uses organic chicken. It's always fresh. And he's got 1 Michelin star. Last month, before Malaysia closed its doors and stopped selling fresh chicken to India, or before the chicken virus hit India, where they had to slaughter 1 million chickens, I used to pay $20 for chicken curry at this restaurant. But now Amala had to import the chicken from Malaysia. So the chicken cost him 10% more. Now he has to decide, do I put 10% increase on my menu or do I make it 20%? And he has to understand the risk. If he makes it 20%, how many of his customers will not come back? If he makes it 10%, will he lose customers or should he go halfway? He increased 5% and he bear the other 5% as a loss. Because sometimes increasing your price can do more damage by partially increasing your price. Do you understand that, everyone? So if he increased his chicken curry from $20 to $24, customers wouldn't say much. But if he increased it from $20 to $35, he will probably have customers that stop ordering chicken curry. They'll all order vegetarian dishes because they're cheaper. Do you understand where I'm coming from? Okay, good. Companies need to strike a balance between raising prices to make up for input cost increases while simultaneously ensuring that they don't rise their prices so much that it suppresses demand. I am stressing this, okay? Because if I don't stress this to you, you will forget the importance of it, okay? So Amal, if you were running a business and you were selling makeup and the company you buy from in France increase the cost of your makeup by 15%, you have to decide, you're a profitable company. Do you bear the 15% and just say to your consumers that even though there's an increase, we value you, we will not increase our prices for the next 3 months? Or do you say to your consumers, we are only increasing our price by 7.5%, and the other 7% we will bear because we appreciate your loyalty? So Amal will have to decide which one is more feasible to her company. Does everybody understand that, Amal? Good, excellent. Okay, let's go on. Okay, do you understand what I've said so far, Rosalie? Rosalie, are you there? Do you understand? Good. Priya, do you understand, Priya? Good. Jocelyn, you look like you're asleep. Do you understand, Jocelyn? Thank you, Jocelyn. Don't go to sleep on me, Jocelyn. Okay, who else have I got here that's not paying attention? Rubika, where are you? I can't see you. Mary Ann Maragnon, where are you? Annie, do you understand what I've said so far, Annie? Annie Hong? Where are you, Annie? I can't see your face. Do you understand, Rubika? Okay. Annie, do you understand what I've just explained? Can I see your face on camera, please? You won't learn unless I see your face. Thank you. Raquel, do you understand what I've just said, Raquel? Leilani, you need to switch on your camera, young lady. You don't learn unless you can see me. Benedict, Maga, do you understand? All right, let's move on, guys. When buyers and sellers meet at the right price, all products are sold. If buyers and sellers don't meet at the right point, at the right median, then either the buyer suffers because they have no buying power, or the seller suffers because he has no customers. Does everybody understand this? Yes or no? So this brings us back to what we learned last week, that understanding your customer demographic and your customer mix through customer relationship management and by being a customer-centric company will help you fight inflation. Does everybody understand the correlation on how important customer centricity plays in every element of your business? Inflation in any market transaction between a seller and a buyer is the price of goods or service needs to be determined by supply and demand in the market. So even though you incur an increase in price, whether you pass it on to your customer or not has to be based on whether you will lose your customers or not. Do you understand that, everyone? For example, the Korean hair salon that has lost 5 of its Korean hairstylists who went back to Korea during COVID-19. They know if a customer comes in and the stylist is now Chinese or Thai and not Korean, the customer will not pay $200 for their haircut. But if they have a Korean stylist, the customer will pay $200. So they have to make a decision. Do they keep charging $200, or do they say if you use a Korean stylist, it's $200, but if you use one of our other stylists, our junior stylists, we charge only $100, which is our old price. They have to weigh up the balance. They have to decide which one is more equitable to the business. And the only way they can do that is by understanding the customer demographic. What do their customers want? What do their customers need? How much will their customers pay based on the information they've collected from their customers? Supply and demand are in turn determined by technology and conditions under which people operate. Okay, technology. If you go to your customer relationship management database and you look at all the women or men that come to your Korean salon over the last 2 years, and you look at them, how many people made appointment with a Korean stylist? How many of them made an appointment with the lower or junior Chinese stylist? You know how many of your customers need Korean and how much they're prepared to pay. So you're able to use your technology to determine how far, to what extent you should raise prices. Let's look at an example here. Okay, let me just get rid of these pictures. Hold on. All right, so let's look at it. At one extreme, the market could be populated by a large number. Why is this happening to me today? Just bear with me for a moment, would you guys? Sorry. Okay. Example, when demand, no, not that one. At one extreme, the market could be populated by a large number of virtually identical sellers and buyers. For example, ballpoint pens. Let's talk about ballpoint pens. You can buy a ballpoint pen at any stationery shop, any bookshop, or any supermarket. You can even buy it online from Amazon, Alibaba, or any on the online shops, and you can buy 10 ballpoint pens probably for $5. Okay, that's one type of market. So there, you must know that you have a lot of competition out there, and if everybody increases their price for a ballpoint pen, then it will be identical across a whole market. However, at the other extreme, there might be only one seller and one buyer. So therefore, there's only one Korean hairstyling salon in your town, and they only have one Korean hairstylist. So that means that everybody wants to go to that Korean salon is going to be waiting for him or her, and they can no longer afford to keep him at the same salary because the guy that used to be there went back to Korea during COVID. They've now brought him back and they've incurred airfares and costs. They have to redeem that cost via their customers. So the question is, by how much do they increase that cost? Because there's only one of those types of services in your town. Okay, so as would be the case, let me give you an example. If I said to April, April, I will give you a pair of Armani jeans, which I bought in Italy because it's your size and I can't wear it. in return, you give me your old pair of jeans that you bought in your own country with no brand. Okay. Now, for her, there's nowhere else where she could get Armani jeans because I'm the only one that has one, and Armani's not sold in her country. And if I ask her for her pair of jeans, no matter how much she loves her old pair of jeans, the only way she's going to get my Armani jeans, because I'm the only person supplying it to her, is to give me what I want. Do you understand that, Nant? Nant, April, do you understand that? Can you open your microphone? Do you understand what I just explained? Nant, unmute your microphone. Hello, unmute your microphone, please. No, you can't? Okay, all right. So, all right, you understand. Thank you. So now let's look at two primary causes of inflation. What causes inflation? What is the cause of inflation? Inflation is caused by a very simple formula. There's two different types. One is what we call demand pull inflation, which occurs when the demand for goods and services in the economy exceeds the economy's ability to produce them. So therefore, factories are no longer selling as much, so they're not producing as much because of inflation, and no one is buying because the prices went up. Example, when demand for new cars recovered more quickly than anticipated from its sharp dip at the beginning of COVID-19 pandemic, there was at the same time a shortage in the supply of semiconductors. So therefore, even though the demand for cars went up, car manufacturers could not get enough semiconductors to use in their cars. So that means the automotive industry found it hard to keep up with the renewed demand for cars, and subsequently there was a new shortage for vehicles, which resulted in a spike in prices of new cars around the world. This is what we call demand pull inflation. The other type of inflation is what we call cost pull inflation. Cost pull inflation occurs when there's a rising price of input goods and services increases the price of final goods and services. So this means that because the cost of the raw materials went up, the final cost to the consumer goes up. This is cost pull inflation. Remember, demand pull was due to the lack of availability of parts required to make the cars, even though there was demand from the customer. But cost pull inflation is based on the fact that the cost went up and people can no longer afford to buy it. Example, commodity prices spiked sharply during pandemic as a result of radical shifts in demand, buying patterns, costs to serve, and perceived value across sectors and value chains. To offset inflation and minimize the impact on financial performance, industry companies were forced to consider price increases that would be passed on to their end consumers, as I've already explained to you. And if we look at that, if we look at what that does, I want to give you a simple example. Okay, let's look at a simple example of inflation. In January 2022, inflation in the United States went up by 7.5% at its highest level since 1982 as a result of soaring increase in prices for energy, electricity, labor, and supply disruptions because they couldn't get enough raw materials due to COVID-19 and the difficulty in shipping raw materials from China. Factories closed down in China. So all of this caused inflation. Okay, so this was a fact that the US suffered a 7.5% increase, its highest level of inflation since 1982. All right, and this happened when? In 2022. That's only a year ago. All right, now prior to 2022, they did suffer an increase, but it wasn't as high as 7.5. In 2022, because of the continued impact of COVID-19 on China and China's continued lockdowns and closures, the US, who imports from China, suffered one of its highest inflations ever recorded. Does everybody understand what I just said? Does everybody understand my example? Amira, do you understand the example I just gave about the United States? Amira? Yes or no? Can you wave your hand if it's yes? Okay, good. Raquel, do you understand the example I just gave? All right, I want to go and pick someone, and I want you to give me an example of inflation that you've experienced on something you bought in 2022. Who can give me an example of something they bought in 2022? Any item, who can give me an example? Okay, we have one hand gone up. Okay, two hands gone up. Who went up first? Okay, Amy Kusi, your hand went up first. Hi, Amy. Open your microphone, and Amal, you're next. Okay, Amy, give me an example.
For me, it's the raw materials for the clothing threading. Like before, we used to buy the raw materials, the cloth, for very, very cheaper one.
Yes.
But now, since they got the pandemic and then the China, because all the material is from China. So we got the experience that it's getting high. Why? Because they cannot provide the clothing. So we cannot buy from them. So we're the one who's trying to get it because we need it and they cannot produce.
So tell us, what did you do? How did you deal with that?
We need to stop the business.
All right, so who bared the difference? You paid the difference or your customer paid?
Actually, we stopped the business. We stopped the production.
You stopped production, right? So
yes.
As a result of stopping production, you lost money. Is that right?
Yes.
All right, but were you able to retain your customers after you went back to production?
No, absolutely, because I cannot provide.
So your customers went elsewhere, right?
Yes.
Okay, so you suffered a tragic loss because you were not trained on how to deal with inflation. And the easiest way out for you was to stop production. Is that right?
Yes, because it's
let me tell you, Amy, as an academic, that was the biggest mistake you made. All right. Because if you'd spoken to me a year ago, I could have showed you ways to talk to your suppliers. Because let's talk about this, Amy. I want all of you to learn from this. Sometimes by you breaking your relationship with your supplier, you're going to cause detriment. Because that supplier, when you go back to them, might say, I can't supply you. I have already committed my stock elsewhere. Or he might no longer give you the discount that you had before. So it would have been better to compromise and say to the supplier, okay, I'm prepared to bear the increase for at least 3 months, and then you bear it for 3 months. But at least we will keep buying off you. Or you should have looked for alternate suppliers of cotton. There's many of them, Turkey, Iran, they're all over the world. But I think what happened, Amy, is you suffered what most companies do. They're not competent in dealing with inflation. As I said, no one has been able to solve inflation. So for many businesses, what they do when they suffer from inflation, automatically they look at price. They can't handle the price because their customers won't buy it. What do? They take the easy way out. They go. All right. What you could have done is to either rebrand, reposition yourself in the market, or offer a lower quality because of the increase in price. You follow where I'm coming from, Amy?
Yes, sir, we did. I do. I changed my field after that. I did not buy the raw materials. I just took from the other customer that the one who make the cloth, and he's sewing cloth. And then
Okay,
I
so
always did it again.
you did something that I'm going to teach you. You changed your buying strategy. Instead of buying cotton producing fabric, you went to buy fabric direct from somebody else who already had cotton. Is that right?
No, sir. I stopped buying the materials. I
Right,
just asked the person if they willing us. We're the one who going to do the sewing.
right. So
After
what you
that
did is
sewing,
you said to your customer, you give us the fabric, we will sew it, but we will
yes,
no longer provide the fabric. So you change your strategy. You went from a full circle provider to just a sewing shop, right?
so,
Am I correct?
yes,
Okay, so
yes,
you didn't stop business. You basically changed your business strategy. Am I right?
yes.
Good. Okay. Amy, I'm not doing this to give you a hard time. I'm doing this so you learn. All right. I want you to learn. All right. So there is alternatives which we're going to look at now that Amy could have followed. And I'll talk to you again shortly, Amy. Okay. Thanks, Amy. Okay, let's go to the next person whose hand went up, and that was Amal. Hi, Amal. What were you going to share with us? Go ahead.
Hello, sir.
Yeah, what were you
Can
going
you
to
hear
tell
me?
us? Yes, go ahead.
Uh, the item that I bought from the store in which the inflation went high. I'm living in Turkey, so in Turkey I was buying some medical books for 100 lira, and
Yes.
after 2023 in this year it became 300.
Why do you think that happened?
I think that happened because lots of customers are buying the same brand, same books from the same store, and they are increasing the price so they can get more, their business can grow.
Well, if they do that, Amal, do you know what's going to happen eventually, right? Some
Yes.
customers will not be able to afford their books. So does the business really grow? No. What
No.
actually happens is they keep making the same income, but they're making it from a reduced number of customers, right? In the
Yes, sir.
previous, they were serving more customers. But what they're doing now is serving a smaller number of customers, but still earning the same revenue because of the price increase, right?
Yes, sir.
The other reason that that could have happened is because a lot of people wanted to go back to medical school after COVID-19, and now more people want to buy the book. Okay, but how long will that last for? It might only be 3 months.
Yeah.
Do you understand where I'm coming
Yes,
from?
sir. Yes,
Thank you
sir.
very much. All right, I'll talk to you again soon. Thank you. All right, let's go on. Let's talk to Dennis. Hi, Dennis. See you there, mate? Unmute your microphone. Go ahead.
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah.
Sorry.
What would you like to share with me?
I'm late.
That's okay. Go ahead. Do you have an example to share with me? I'm sorry, Dennis, I can't hear you. Mr. Amala, could you send message to Dennis to fix his microphone? Okay, let's go to the next person. Are you there, Dennis? All right. Okay, let's try someone else. I can't mute him now. Why? Are you there, Dennis? No. Okay. All right. Let's talk to someone else. Hi, Raquel. Can you unmute your microphone? Hi, Raquel.
Hi,
Hi,
sir.
Raquel. What
Good
are you going to
afternoon.
share with me? Tell me your example of inflation. Go ahead.
Yeah, during pandemic, okay, we experienced a lot of course, obviously, the price increase. We used to buy Australian lamb, okay,
Yes.
right after the pandemic. Okay, I used to purchase only Australian lamb in Carrefour. It's a
Yes.
French
Yes, I know
yeah, it's a
Carrefour.
French yeah, company. Okay, like for example, I'm just giving you a sample in dollar because we're using here dirhams. For
Yeah.
example, the lamb cost per kilo is 25 dirham. It's like
Yes.
increase in double price, which is like $12. $12
Right. Okay.
per
Yeah. All
kilo,
right. No
which is
worries.
really quite expensive. And I said, oh my God, how could I buy? Because really the Australian lamb only is the best lamb that you can buy in UAE.
I know
It's the
that.
best. I don't know.
I
It's
know
the
that.
best lamb
Well,
here
it
in the
is.
UAE.
I know. It's from my country. I know that. But okay.
Oh yeah,
But,
yeah, Australian. Oh, I don't know. Oh, that is it
okay.
really. I don't know. I don't know I don't know your I don't know how Australian lamb is so tasty and really doesn't
Okay.
have a smell like the
Okay. Well,
the
let me
other
just
the
share with
other
you.
lamb.
Let me share with you. Australia is not known for lamb, actually. It's known for beef. But New Zealand has better lamb than Australia. So when someone says to me, Australian lamb is good, I'm so proud of it. But let me tell you the difference. New Zealand lamb costs you $30 a kilo today. Okay, so that was what it cost before COVID-19. After COVID-19, it costs you $56 a kilo. Why? Because New Zealand lamb has a reputation of being the best in the world and the price is higher. So what happened? When New Zealand lamb became very expensive, the number of people buying Australian lamb grew post COVID-19, right? So what happened as the demand went up? Suppliers faced a shortage of lamb for export, live lamb. So that's why you saw an increase in the cost of lamb, right? So for you,
Okay.
it's a demand pull inflation. And for the consumer, it became a cost pull inflation because there wasn't enough to meet demand. And as a result, prices went up. More consumers wanted to buy it and some consumers couldn't afford to buy it. Do you understand where I'm coming from?
Yes, sir.
Yes or no?
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Good. Excellent. I'll come back to you. All right. Amy has
Thank
switched
you.
off her camera. Not sure where Amy's gone. All right. Let's go back. All right. Let's continue our lesson. Does anybody else want to suggest anything? Does anybody else want to give me an example instead of hiding and not learning? Who else can give me an example? Come on, wake up, everyone. Okay, I've got one more example. Another hand just went up. Gideon Onab. Hi, Gideon. What's your example? Are you there, Gideon? No? Okay. Okay, who else? Jocelyn, would you like to give me an example? Go ahead, Jocelyn. Are you there, Jocelyn? Go ahead. Jocelyn? Are you there, Jocelyn?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, what's your example? Go ahead.
Hi. Good
Yeah.
afternoon, sir. Yes, sir. As we've been on the pandemic time last time. Usually, sir, as I was on actually here in Dubai. It so happened that the price increased with the use of the medical things like the mask, the gloves, like this one. It's been from 8 dirham, sir. The packet of a mask that comes 8 dirhams only. It comes to 150
That's because
dirhams.
of demand cost inflation. Too many people
Yes, sir.
wanted masks and the UAE government failed because they didn't
Mm-hmm.
stock up enough masks in their country. They were too worried about
Mm-hmm.
giving the vaccination. That is again demand pull inflation caused by the government's incompetence and not bringing enough
Mm-hmm.
masks into the country. In Singapore, the government did vice versa. They bought massive number of vaccinations and they increased their buying of masks and kept it in a warehouse. So there was never a shortage of masks. But your government in
Mm-hmm.
the UAE did what many governments did. They were too focused on buying vaccinations and they didn't think the
Yes.
masks would be needed. So it's demand pull inflation because demand went up, supply went down,
Mm-hmm.
costs went up. Do you understand that? Okay,
Yes, sir.
thank you,
It's
Jocelyn.
okay. Yes,
Thank
sir.
you. Okay, let's go on. I can talk to one more person. Venus, go ahead, Venus. Unmute your microphone. Hi, Venus. You want to give me an example? Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, good afternoon. Yes. So, based on my experience here in Hong Kong, when I was at the time pandemic come, I'm not very difficulties to ride the taxi or even on the MTR, the train one.
Yes.
Because of the pandemic, they will rise up here. So lots of people is so difficult to ride on the taxi. So what I will do is, the before it's 2 years past, it's already 4.5 the fare.
Yeah.
So even in like how many kilometers, they will not increase like 1.5 Hong Kong dollar. So because the pandemic, it should be very, very big difference they come in. They
Yep,
increase like 2% of the fare in the train.
that's
So
right.
more very worse, yes.
Yep.
So this is
And
my
you,
basic
can you
experience.
tell me why that happened? Why do you think it happened?
I think it's because actually, as I always hear the news, they have something, economy here is really, really breakdown.
Okay,
So
good.
yeah, even
Okay,
in the popular restaurant here from the mainland in China, it's coming.
okay,
Yeah. So I
okay.
think people will always
I understand you, Venus. I
gonna
can't hear you. The
happen.
police siren is
I
going, but good point. Thank you so much. I'll come back to you. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, very good examples from all of you. Let's go back to the lesson. Okay, so remember, we've looked at demand pull inflation, and cost pull inflation. Now, let's look at it. We talked about demand pull and cost pull, but what we need to do now is understand competition, because businesses compete against one another. So how does competition play a role in managing inflation? Perfect competition is when there are a large number of suppliers and demanders. So that means there's a large number of suppliers and a large number of people who want to buy the product. Buyers and sellers can find one another at no cost, and there's nothing from stopping someone else to go into that industry. That is perfect competition. It's open. You compete against one another. In perfect competition, no one has the ability to affect prices because there's so many players. The day that Amal reduces her price, somebody else will reduce the price because there's nothing to stop them from competing against you. Okay, both sides take the market prices as given, and the market clearing price is the one at which there is neither excess supply nor excess demand. So for example, if there's 20 salons in Manila and they all are Korean salons, they are all charging $200 per customer, then there's no competition. It's perfect because they're all the same. However, if Amal decided to reduce her price to $175, okay, she is at a clearing price for whatever reason her business dictates. But there's nothing to stop all the other salons in the area of going down to her price. Does everybody understand that? Yes or no? Wave your hands. Wave your hands. Marites, do you understand? Good, excellent. Thank you, Vilu. All right. Suppliers will keep producing as long as they can sell their goods for a price that exceeds their cost of making one more. The marginal cost of production. Okay, so if I'm a supplier and I can produce this pen at $2 and for $2 I make a profit, I'll keep doing it. However, Marites's factory, they need to employ new staff. She has to pay a higher salary. She can no longer produce that at $2. She's free to produce it at $2.10, providing her customers will buy it. Buyers will go on purchasing as long as the satisfaction they derive from consuming is greater than the price they pay, the marginal utility of consumption. So let me talk about that. The people that go to Amal's Korean salon and are happy to pay $175, they may get a Korean stylist who's not as good looking as the Korean hunk that works at Marites's salon, which charges $200. Okay, so it depends. Is the customer that is going to pay $175, is he happy with what he's getting, or is he happy to go to Marites's salon and bear that marginal increase in price in order to get the utility consumption of a more experienced stylist? Do you all understand that, everyone? Yes or no? Do you understand that, Marites? Okay. If prices rise, additional suppliers will be enticed to enter the market. So if prices of pens in the market go up and people are now prepared to pay $4 for a pen instead of $3, that will entice the supplier that sells your shop the pens to increase their price, because they know that people in the market will keep buying the pens from you anyway. Supply will increase until a market clearing price is reached. Again, if prices fall, suppliers who are unable to cover their costs will drop out. Does everybody understand that? Do you understand what I mean by a clearing price? Yes or no? The clearing price is the price at which they can make money, cover their costs, and sell the goods. If they're no longer able to do that and cover their costs, they will simply drop out of business because their production cost has become too high and no one will buy it, because if they buy it at their cost, they will not be able to sell it to the final consumer. Let's talk about how all of this, all of it, whether it's inflation, demand pull, cost pull, or whether it's perfect competition. All right. How is all this impacted by the gateway to you being able to get the goods and services and deliver them to the consumer? All of this is affected by what we call supply chain management, because inflation has such a painful effect on supply chain management. Supply chain management is the management of the flow of goods, data, finances related to a product or service, from the procurement of the raw materials to the delivery of the product at its final destination. For a Korean salon, it could be the cost of bringing the Korean hairdresser, paying him a salary, providing him accommodation. For a dress manufacturer, a fabric designer, and a sewing shop, it's the cost of buying the fabric, the cost of buying the cotton. All of this is involved in supply chain management. Supply chain management represents the efforts by the suppliers to develop and implement chains that are efficient and economical as possible. Supply chains cover everything from production to making the product, to the information systems to sell their product, and the systems they need to distribute their product. Supply chain management is intended to centrally control and link the production with shipping and distribution of that product. So by managing one's supply chain, companies can cut out excessive costs and deliver the products or services to their consumers faster at a lower cost. Now, how does supply chain management achieve this? It's done by keeping tighter control on internal inventories, by not overstocking your inventory and burning cash on inventory in a warehouse, by having internal production at the lowest cost possible, by having reliable distribution sources, so as soon as it's manufactured, it goes out and reaches the end retailer or service provider. Okay, it also has an impact on sales and the inventories of company vendors. So that means is that if you are producing dresses and you cannot have a correct supply chain management, and you're buying and producing, but you are unable to sell it and distribute it, then the number of orders or the amount of orders you buy from your vendors who supply you the cotton or the fabric will drop. So it's a continuous cycle. Supply chain management not only affects you as a business in the way you buy and control your costs, it also affects the people you buy from, and it also affects the consumer you sell to. Let me leave you with a quote. Supply chain management assumes that nearly every product that comes to market results from the efforts of various organizations that make up a supply chain. And although supply chains have existed for ages. The majority of companies today, Marites, Vilu, Ria, have only recently paid attention to them as value add to their operations. Okay, so what we're saying here, that market results from the efforts of various organizations, okay, these results for many years have been impacted by the outcome of SCM. But it's only recently that companies have realized how important and value adding SCM brings to their organization. What does SCM stand for? Supply chain management. Do you understand what I mean by that, Valu? Can you open your microphone, Valu? Hi, Valu. Unmute your microphone.
Yes, sir.
Tell me, do you understand what I mean by supply chain management?
Yes, sir.
Give me an example. What does supply chain management mean, Valu? Are you there, Valu?
Yeah, I'm here.
What does supply chain management mean? Can you give me an example? Can you give me an example or not? Are you there? Okay, it's okay, no problem. Can somebody else give me an example?
Sorry, sir.
Yeah, go ahead. Or it's okay. Please read the notes. You need to understand this. It's very simple. Okay, who can give me an example? Muriel, can you give me an example? Muriel? Muriel, can you give me an example? Mr. Karithi, can you give me an example? Can you unmute your microphone? Tell me, what is supply chain management, Mr. Karithi?
In layman language, it is the conversion of raw material to a finished product in the shortest time possible, using the shortest.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So it's basically the purchasing of raw materials, the conversion to product, and the supply of that product to your customers. Is that correct? Okay, good stuff. Thank you very much. Good stuff. Thank you. All right, let's go on. Okay, let me go on. Okay, so let's go on, ladies and gentlemen. Let's talk about the other elements that affect us. Okay. Supply chain managers play an important role. The supply chain manager needs to minimize shortages and keep his costs down. The job is not only about logistics and purchasing inventory. A supply chain manager can either make a profit or break a company. And it's very important for a supply chain manager to understand how to deal with inflation. The role of a supply chain manager is to oversee and manage the overall supply chain and logistic operations to maximize efficiency and minimize the costs of the organization's supply chain. For example, he has to buy the raw material, make sure it arrives in the factory on time. He has to make sure that when it's produced, he doesn't let it sit in its warehouse. He ships it out to his customers as soon as possible. All of this comes to the supply chain manager. Let's look at 5 parts of supply chain management that you guys should understand in order to be able to have effective supply chain management and deal with inflation. The first one is planning. To get the best results from supply chain management, the process needs to begin with planning to match supply with customer and manufacturing demands. Companies must predict what their future needs will be and make sure they buy at the right price at the right time and be able to manufacture it and supply it to their end buyer or end consumer or the end company who's going to pass it on to the end consumer, their wholesaler, etc. And this doesn't only talk about the finished product, it also takes raw materials needed for each stage of the manufacturing to make sure that they have enough equipment to produce it, to make sure they have enough power supply and power generators in case there's power shortages in some countries as there is at the moment. Okay, so some companies don't rely on a person to look after supply chain management, a manager. They also actually use software, ERP software, which is a total enterprise management system, which oversees all the elements of supply chain and brings them all together through computerized software. And a lot of companies now use ERP system, enterprise databases, enterprise integrated platforms to manage their supply chain, because they're able to get more reliable statistics and communicate with all the vendors through this ERP. Remember that planning is one of the 5. Let's go to the next one. The next one is sourcing. Efficient supply chain management processes need strong relationships with suppliers. And in order for them to do that, they need to make sure that the sourcing entails working with the vendors to supply you the raw materials needed throughout the manufacturing process. So if you don't have a number of vendors from where you can get the raw material and you only rely on one, you will be in trouble. A company may be able to plan and work with a supplier to source goods in advance. However, different companies in different industries will have different sourcing requirements. Okay, and what are these sourcing requirements? Okay, let's go through them. Number 1, raw materials must meet manufacturing standards. Number 1. Number 2, the prices paid for the goods are in line with the market expectations. All right. Number 3, the vendor has flexibility to deliver emergency materials due to unforeseen circumstances. And the last one is the vendor has a proven record of delivering goods on time and in good quality. Now, if you don't have all of this, guys, if you don't have all of this, you cannot basically have a reliable sourcing strategy. Do you all understand what I mean by that? If you don't have all these elements in sourcing, a reliable supplier who can deliver on time, a supplier who can deliver in the right cost frame, you cannot, in actual fact, have a credible sourcing policy. You need to have more than one supplier that can supply you the goods. You cannot, the goods being the raw material, you cannot rely on just one. Just one moment. Okay, so you need the raw materials, okay, and the raw materials have to be of the right quality and meet the specs. The prices paid for them have to be in line with market expectations. The vendor has to be flexible and able to deliver to you as quickly as you need it. And the vendor has to be somebody with experience. Now, if you take all that into consideration, you cannot rely on one vendor. You should have 2 or 3 identified vendors in the event that one fails. All right. Supply chain management is especially critical when manufacturers are working with perishable goods. Does anybody here know what perishable goods are? What are perishable goods? Perishable goods are goods which have a life expectancy, a expiry date. For example, if you're buying fresh strawberries to make fruit salad, the strawberries need to be used within so many days before they rot in the fridge and go bad. So raw materials, perishables, especially the ones that have an expiry date or ones which are fresh grown and need to be kept and used within a certain number of days. You cannot rely on one raw material supplier. You must have a variety in case one fails. The next element of the 5 parts of the supply chain is manufacturing. Manufacturing. At the core of the supply chain management process, the company transforms raw materials by using machinery, labor, external forces to make something new. So you buy the raw materials, but then if you can't process the raw materials on time to supply your end customer with goods or services, you basically have broken the supply chain. The manufacturing process may be further divided into subtasks such as assembly, testing, inspection, and packaging. So if Amal's clothes factory can produce 1,000 dresses a day, but her quality control department can only approve 500 dresses a day, that would affect her manufacturing process in being able to finalize goods for packaging and distribution. Every element of the manufacturing process, which includes testing, quality control, inspection, and packaging, plays a part of the manufacturing element of the supply chain. During the manufacturing process, companies must remember they must be able to control waste, okay? And they must be able to have a strategy to deviate the process if needed and have a backup plan. Otherwise, perishable goods will go to waste, or the goods will be held up and not be able to go to market quick enough. And that means you lose sales opportunities because your end buyer will go and buy from somewhere else. If a company is using more raw materials than planned and sourced for due to a lack of employee training, that again means that because your employees are not properly trained, you're burning more raw materials than they should, and you might run into a problem getting more raw materials because your supplier cannot supply it in time. So you need to make sure you have more than one raw material supplier. Everything impacts the supply chain. Number 4, delivering. Once the products are made and sales are finalized, a company must get the products into the hands of its retail shops or its wholesalers or direct to customers in the end consumer's hand. The distribution process should always be seen as a brand image contributor, as up until this point, the customer has not yet interacted with the product. Your actual relationship with the customer has to go all the way to the point of time where the customer gets to see and use your product. In very strong and reliable supply chain management processes, a company has robust logistics capability and delivery channels to ensure that the products are delivered on time, in perfect quality, and at a reasonable cost to the customer. Okay, what does this mean? It means that you have to have more than one delivery channel. If Amal only relies on her uncle with his delivery truck to deliver her dresses to the retail shops, and her uncle one day decides to go on holiday, Amal's business, her supply chain will fall apart. And that's why you always need to have more than one distribution channel and a backup in place. Example, how might Amal's company be impacted if her delivery process could not be done because there was heavy snowfall in Istanbul and all the roads were blocked for 1 month? It was too dangerous to go out. How would Amal deal with distribution? Should she have plans to deal with that? Yes. Should she understand that Istanbul is buried by snow for 3 months a year, and she should plan to have stock stored at a warehouse outside the area affected by snowfall so that the delivery from that warehouse to her customers still goes out on time and does not affect the supply chain management process? The last one of the 5 elements is returning. The supply chain management does not end when you deliver to the customer. The supply chain management process ends once you provide the support and the customer service for the product, which means if the customer has a problem with the product, you're able to return it, service it, or replace it. The return process for many companies is called internally reverse logistics, because you're not delivering it to the customer, you're taking it back from the customer to replace it or to repair it. Company must ensure it has the capabilities to receive its return products correctly, assign refunds, or replace them. If you don't do that, you will have negative implications on your brand. It will tarnish your brand, and as a result, you will have less people buying from you. Many companies consider customers' returns or communication with the customer regarding the return of a faulty product between the customer and the company as critical, because this is when they get to show the customer that the customer is important to them by them supporting the brand and showing to the customer that the brand cares about their customer. It's a very important part of customer returns that the company itself has a team which is able to effectively communicate with the customer, make sure you give the customer peace of mind, and ensuring that you quickly get the product which is non-conforming or faulty and either replace it or provide them a refund. You must have the right processes inside your company to do that. Otherwise, you're missing a complete supply chain management process. Okay, let me just talk about another element of supply chain management now. Let's talk about how inflation affects supply chain management. We've been talking about inflation and we suddenly changed to supply chain management. I want you to understand the correlation between two. Higher inflation that affects key expenses such as raw materials, supplies, utility, wages, and salaries puts pressure on the margins of any business. If the increased costs cannot be passed on to customers through higher selling prices, this would have a negative effect on the value of the company and the profitability of the company. Does everybody understand what I mean by that? Yes or no? Does everybody understand that? Yes or no? Okay, so can somebody give me an example of what would happen to your company, Priya, if you could not handle inflation? Can you unmute your microphone, Priya? Hi, Priya.
Hi.
If your company couldn't fight inflation, what are the effects that you understand the company could face?
I will take some experience from that company, and
yes,
and I never blame from the company because maybe the management want to look another person. Maybe they want a good employee for the company.
it's not only about the employee. It's all about it's not only about the employee, Priya. Please be careful. One employee cannot alone control or fight the effects of inflation. It's a complete package. Do you understand that?
Yes.
The effects of inflation can mean paying a higher salary, and the company may have to reduce salaries or hire new people at a cheaper salary and fire people who don't want to take a salary reduction. All right. But salaries may be affected by inflation. All right. The cost of manpower will be affected. Do you understand where I'm coming from, Priya?
Okay.
But it's not,
Okay,
it's nothing related to one person. Do you understand that?
Yes, understand.
Are you sure, Priya?
Yes, I'm sure.
Thank you so much.
Okay,
thank you. All right. Okay, do you understand that, Amira? Hi, Amira.
Yes, sir.
Do you understand the effects of inflation on a business?
Yeah, because I had also experienced in such inflation last year.
Right. Give me an example of your experience.
Yeah, last year I was importing goods from Bangladesh. That is right. Yeah.
Yes.
So before they gave me 75 pesos per piece.
Yes.
Then when when I request again for a volume of stock, it becomes 120 pesos per piece. So I cannot.
Okay, Amira, but you understand where you failed as a business owner because you were relying on only one supplier in Bangladesh. Do you understand that? So basically what you did, you jeopardized your own market because you didn't have a supply chain management plan in place. No business, Amira, should rely on one supplier. Do you understand that? Because if you rely on one, you don't have any power to fight. Because by the time you find another supplier, you've already lost customers. Do you understand that?
Yes, sir.
I want to ask you a question, Amira. I want you to understand this because you're a very smart woman. Let me ask you a question. You want to buy a product made in Bangladesh, right? Because you like that product and you can sell it elsewhere. You may want to consider having two suppliers in Bangladesh, but also having another supplier in Turkey or China that can copy that Bangladesh product at a cheaper price. Do you understand where I'm coming from? So as a businesswoman, that's something that you need to negotiate with different suppliers and make contacts. You might contact somebody like Amal that lives in Turkey and say, hey, Amal, this is what I'm looking for. And can you help me find a supplier in Turkey that would be able to supply me? Okay. Do you understand where I'm coming from? So you need to open opportunities to make sure that your customer never feels the end impact. Because what happens if you do, Amira, you've suffered this. Your supplier could no longer supply you, so you could no longer deliver your product at the same price. Is that right? And what happened to your customers? They couldn't buy because the price became too high. The elasticity became too big. Am I correct? Do you understand what I'm saying, Amira?
Yes, sir.
All right, good, excellent. Amira, if you're still in business and you need help in implementing or finding suppliers, drop me an email, tell me what you want to buy and what your requirements are, and I will try to help you and tell you what parts of the world are able to help you. All right. I can't help you by looking for suppliers. I don't have the time, but I can tell you which countries are best suited for your product. Okay. Because a lot of times people think this is a product famous in Bangladesh. I only buy it from Bangladesh. But when you go to a country that copies it like Turkey or China, they usually do a much better job. Do you understand what I'm saying? And they're much more competitive. So you can make more money. Do you follow that?
Yes, sir.
All right, good girl. Thank you, Amira. Okay, guys, does everybody understand what I've said so far? Okay, let's go back to my screen. Actual fact, can we take a 5-minute break and then we'll go on? Wally needs to get a drink of water because I've been talking too much today and none of you have been talking, and Mr. Amala hasn't said anything today. He's been very quiet. My boss is keeping control of me today. So I need to take a 5-minute break. That gives all of you ladies a time to run to the bathroom, make yourself coffee, make yourselves beautiful and come back because we love to see you all smiling. And for all you gentlemen, it's time to go and get a cold beer from the fridge or a cold Coca-Cola, preferably not a beer, Samir, and come back, and I'll see you all in 5 minutes time. All right. See you soon, guys. Okay, I'm back. Is everybody back? Can we make a start? Great. Excellent. Let's go back to our PowerPoint. Okay, so we said just before there that there's 5 elements to the supply chain management process. Okay, and we said those elements are, let's go back and refresh them because I think some of you didn't actually learn them. Okay, they are 1, sorry, just bear with me for a moment. 1 is planning, 2 is sourcing, 3 is manufacturing, 4 is delivering, and 5 is returning, right? And we just looked at the fact of how so we looked at the fact that how does inflation affect supply chain management? And we agreed that inflation has a direct impact on every part: planning, manufacturing, sourcing, delivering. They are heavily affected. If the quality goes down, the returning element also goes up because more people return due to the lack of quality. So all of the 5 elements are impacted by inflation. The whole supply chain management process is impacted. As the demand for a particular good or service increases, the available supply decreases. When fewer items are available, consumers are sometimes willing to pay more to obtain the item, providing it's within their spending power. Okay, supply and demand. If there's demand, you give supply. If there's demand and not enough supply, then the cost goes up because people are fighting for the right product at the right price. The result is higher prices due to demand pull inflation. Remember, we said demand pull inflation and cost pull inflation. Let's look at the effects of inflation in distribution or in manufacturing, okay? What are they? Decreases in customer purchases mean that the supplier is stuck with goods and is no longer buying more from the manufacturer. Wages and employee turnover. Wages go up, people leave because they're not being paid enough and it costs more to hire replacements. Okay, what happens also? The cost of raw materials goes up, so you have to pay more for the goods so you can sell them to the customer. If you're delivering a service, like we just said, a Korean hair salon, but all your Korean hairstylists have now gone back to Korea and you had to pay more salary to bring them back after COVID-19, then the cost of providing that service to your customer will go up. Increases of delivery costs, cost of fuel, thanks to the war in Russia and the Ukraine, the cost of energy has gone up, therefore delivery costs will go up. And as companies incur higher costs, and companies have to bear some of that higher cost because they're afraid to pass the complete increase onto their customers, it reduces their ability to invest in new products or invest in new technology because they are trying to minimize their expenditure in order to stay in business because they're bearing some of the costs rather than passing it on to other customers. A very simple example. Okay, let's go on. How to mitigate the impact of inflation on supply. One, it's very easy. Improve spend and supply chain visibility. So be prepared to spend more on having a more functional supply chain management system. Make sure you have a team that are competent to manage your supply chain. Make sure that everybody in the company knows who they are, and make sure your vendors know your supply chain management team. Make sure that you diversify your supply network. Do not rely on one supplier. Make sure that you constantly review your contracts with all your suppliers to make sure that you're getting the best deal. Always focus on using some sort of supply management software, or make sure that you have technology which will allow you to leverage on more competitive suppliers or suppliers who are prepared to give you a better deal for what you're buying. Make sure that you have cross-functional teams to protect your margins. For example, if you buy fabric from one supplier, cotton from another supplier, and you should think of having a more diversified team or cross-functional team, maybe where you buy both from one supplier, or you change your strategy delivering the product to the customer. Instead of delivering make to order service where you show them the fabric, you supply the fabric and the cotton and you sew it, go from saying that at the meantime, the cost of fabric has gone up, so we're offering another service. If you prefer to supply us your own fabric, we will stitch it for you based on the design you give us. Now, of course, you would have minimum order quantities, MOQs, okay? But that is okay. But you have to build cross-functional teams that will allow you to keep generating revenue to protect your margins and stay in business. Dealing with inflation strategically means a company needs to recalibrate and clean up its product portfolio and look at how they can tweak their product so they can still run the business. They need to look at how they can reposition their brand, and they need how to understand how they can come around the cost increases and still have a pricing model that meets the customer's expectations. So those three words, recalibrate, reposition, and replace, are critical in any strategic understanding of inflation and the supply chain management process. Reposition is really important. What do you do to reposition yourself in the market? How do you recalibrate your product or services? Does everybody understand what I just said? Yes or no? Does everybody understand that? Esita, do you understand that? Okay, good. All right, ladies and gentlemen, today what I've tried to do is I've simply tried to cover the basics of inflation and supply chain management. If I wanted to give you a full lecture about the economics of inflation, we would need to run a class for 1 month. But I believe all of you here are studying with us, and eventually you do a module on economics and business, okay? Now, what I've given you today is the basic principles and knowledge that you can apply to your brain and to your business and to your job, because now you understand what causes inflation. You understand the two major types of inflation: demand pull inflation and cost pull inflation. You understand the most common economy that practices in most countries, which is the perfect economy, okay? And you understand the 3 R's in order to retaliate strategically against inflation. Does everybody understand what I've said today? Yes or no? Okay, today's lecture has run 1.5 hours. So today we will not go to 2 hours. But what I want you to do is this. I want to give you all some homework to make sure that you're learning, okay? I want you all before Monday to come up with one element, one example of a product or service that you used to buy prior to COVID-19. And I want you to tell me what happened to that product during COVID-19. Was it demand pull inflation or cost pull inflation, and why? And then I want you to tell me how the company that sells that product could use the 3 R's in positioning itself to deal with inflation. Does everybody understand me? Yes or no? You will all send your homework to me by email, and the subject line will be homework, BizTalk, inflation and supply chain management, and today's date. I will read it and reply to you okay within 7 days. Mr. Amala, could you give everybody my email address, eih.wally1@gmail.com. If you want to learn and you want to be able to take these academic principles and use them, you need to do the homework activity. Does everybody understand that? Wave your hands, wake up. Okay, on Monday, you will receive a copy of the PowerPoint, and I will put the homework activity in the last PowerPoint. Make sure you read it. Your homework must be submitted before 12 midnight on Tuesday. I repeat, 12 midnight on Tuesday. Today being the 11th of March, everybody who wants their homework read must reach me before 12 midnight on the 14th of March. Could you put that in the chat box, please, Mr. Amala? And I want you to use examples, Amira, such as your business, all right? I want you to give me real examples so I can give you strategy to help you. Do you understand that, Amira? I have 38 years experience, Amira. I can help you, trust me. I can help you, okay? All right. Do you all understand that? Yes or no? All right, ladies and gentlemen, from Wally Router here in Singapore, I thank you so much for joining me for BizTalk. To my co-host and my partner, Mr. Amala, my boss here, my administrator, thank you, sir, for bringing us another BizTalk. I look forward to seeing you all at the next BizTalk or leadership session. At the next BizTalk, we're going to go away from economics. We're going to go to some easier subjects and give you all a break and make it more fun for you. But I think it's been very important to address some really important subjects that you're all interested in dealing in business in the 21st century and dealing with inflation and how inflation affects the supply chain management process, because all of this is related to what you're all going to be learning or have already learned in your diploma or postgraduate diploma courses. Do you understand that, Jane Cruz? Wave your hand, Jane. Smile, Jane. You haven't smiled to me today, Jane. Everybody smile. All right. Okay. Amal, smile. Thank you. Amira, smile. Take your finger off your nose and smile, Amira. Very good girl, Amira. Beautiful. Jocelyn, smile. Ladies and gentlemen, from Wally Router here in Singapore, I thank you for joining me for BizTalk. Remember, your future is in your palm. The knowledge you gain is how you learn and learn from your mistakes. The most powerful and successful people in the world made mistakes. They learned just like you are learning. Do not let your journey on the train of life and the train of becoming rich and successful stop. Keep on pushing the train. Keep the train on the track. I will see you all at the next BizTalk or leadership session. Thank you and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Mr.